I just had to make put that up there. Because if the guy is close to the show, he's not something like that. Right? I don't know what
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Beautiful. We'd like to welcome you all very warmly to the opening ceremony of the African Studies Association of Africa Second Biennial Conference, which is being held under the theme African Studies and Global Politics. For our colleagues who have traveled far and near, we say Akwaba. Akwaba to you. Akwaba means welcome, and I'm sure we're hearing a lot of it whilst you are here. My name is Akunu Dake, and I will be helping you during this conference. So you are all very much welcome, and I don't like to do this, but to apologize for the 30 minutes late start. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my task here is to recognize a couple of key people. We are all very, very important people here, but it's my duty to recognize a couple of the role players for this morning. And I would like to start from my father's left. Huh? We have Professor Sete Suman, the co-chair of this conference. And then we have Professor Georgie Chikata. She is the director of the Institute of African Studies. Our very, very, very special guest, and of course, keynote speaker for this morning, Madam Elizabeth Ohene. I also like to introduce to you the Nana, our Nana, who will be officially opening this conference for us. Nana Kobna Nketia V, Omahene of Esikado Traditional. I would also like to recognize Professor Akusi Adumakwa Pofo, the founding vice president of the African Studies Association of Africa. We have a number of keynote speakers for the conference, and it is my duty to recognize them. Professor Jacob Gordon, Professor Techiwa Menu, Professor Jean Allman, Dr. Wangui Wanguru, and there's one very big lady who is hiding behind. She'll be saying thank you to us, Madame Abenachwe. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is also my duty to introduce the chairperson for this occasion. The chairperson has been on the faculty of the University of Ghana since 1997. He is a professor of geography and former dean of the then Faculty of Social Sciences. At present, he is the provost of the College of Humanities. He has distinguished himself locally and internationally as a scholar and university administrator. He's held visiting appointments and research affiliations at a number of universities, including the University of Canterbury, Christchurch, New Zealand, University of Canterbury, Christchurch, New Zealand, Ohio State University, San Diego State University, and the University of Würzburg in Germany. His research spans the boundaries of geography, epidemiology, and development studies, and he has published widely in his field both locally and internationally. Professor Ajay Mensah maintains a vibrant interaction with members of his disciplinary subcommunity through membership of the following associations: the Population Association of America, the Association of American Geographers, Union of African Population Studies, and the International Union of the Scientific Study of Population. He serves on two very important international bodies: one, the Commission of Population Geography of the International Geographical Union, and the International Advisory Board of Population and Environment. His CV is 10 pages, so just take it easy. In recent years, he's presented papers at major international conferences and workshops under the auspices of the World Health Organization, Academy of Science of South Africa, and the Population Association of America. It is this short. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to recognize our chairperson for the occasion and welcome me accordingly, Professor Samuel Ajay Mensah. Professor Ajay Mensah will give us his remarks.
Nana Kobna Nketia the Faith, Omahine of Esikado traditional area, Madam Lisbeth Ohine, renowned journalist, Professor Georgie Chikata, Director, Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana, Professor Akusia Adomako Ampofo, Founding Vice President, African Studies Association of Africa. On behalf of the University of Ghana, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the second Biennial Conference of the African Studies Association of Africa that we have the honor of hosting. I would like to extend a special welcome to our international guests and hope you'll take the opportunity to enjoy as many facets of Ghana as time will permit you. We are very pleased that the ASAA chose our campus for this important gathering, and would like to thank the leadership and members of the association and Professors Akusia Adomako Ampofo and Seth Asuma and the rest of the local organizing team whose members have put together this important and engaging program. It seems that today, in as much as knowledge is becoming more accessible globally, largely because of the internet, it appears that what is told about Africa is at odds with our reality. Sadly, this is not true only of spaces outside the continent, but also within it. This is what makes the ASAA so valuable for the academy, in that faculty and students can engage on issues pertaining to Africa and her diaspora from a position of the continent. I'm also gratified to learn that the association intends to make advocacy for those of us who work on African issues, especially inside the academy, a focal area of professional engagement. We need many voices to advocate on African-centered epistemologies and conceptualizations. I will now conclude by exhorting all of us to reflect on our individual roles in this enterprise of centering Africa's future in our work as scholars, university administrators, teachers, civil society actors, students, and journalists. Whatever we may teach or research on, there is an African perspective that benefits or harms African people. Knowledge is not neutral, so whether you are researching into new ways of preventing malaria or tracking successful poverty alleviation policies, there is a way that considers our reality, and I urge you to take that road. I sincerely hope you will enjoy the next 2 days of debate and networking May your discussions bring renewal for our continent and her diaspora. Thank you for the participation, and I wish you all fruitful deliberations.
Thank you very much, Professor Ajay Mensah. Okay. I would like to recognize a few other people that I'm seeing. Professor A.C. Sutherland Addy of the Institute of African Studies. Yeah, she's always protesting. Yeah. Professor George Hagan, former director of the Institute of African Studies. My former boss, chairman of the National Commission on Culture, and the two mini chairs, so please. Professor Tukwe Okan, President of the Secretary General of the Pan-African Writers Association. You are welcome. We have a number of excellencies here, and I will recognize them as I get information. I can't recognize though Mr. Alphonse Yose Trujillo, Counselor of the Foreign Affairs of the Embassy of Colombia. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's now my duty to welcome Professor Akusia Adumaku Ampofu, the founding Vice President of the African Studies Association of Africa, to welcome us. Thank you.
Akwaba once again. Our Provost, Samuel Ajay Mensah, Madam Elizabeth Ohene, our distinguished keynote speaker, Nana Komnan Ketia, the fifth Omahene of Esikado traditional area, who I believe I may refer to as my only slightly senior brother. Your Excellencies from the Diplomatic Corps, Professor Georgie Chikata, the Director of the Institute of African Studies and the generous host for this assembly, Deans and Directors, esteemed colleagues and students, members of the press. On behalf of the ASAA, the Conference Planning Committee, my indefatigable co-chair, Professor Seth Asuma, I'm delighted to be standing here welcoming you to participate and share in our second Biennial Conference, co-hosted by the Institute of African Studies. We are honored to have all of you with us today. That many of you traveled long distances and made significant personal investments to be here serves to remind and assure us just how important the work that we are doing is. Thank you very much once again for coming. After a few years of consultations and planning, the ASAA was born in October 2013 during the 50th anniversary celebrations of the Institute of African Studies here at the University of Ghana. This is our second biennial conference, the first having taken place at the University of Ibadan in October 2015. The ASAA is committed to providing a space where Africanists can formally collaborate to engage in the important work of reflecting on and proposing concrete responses to the global African condition, the quality of life and the unearthing of the buried and silent stories of African peoples on the continent and her diaspora. This year, our theme is African Studies and Global Politics. The work we do as professional Africanists must impact our communities. Mr. Chairman, as we pay close attention to contemporary global socioeconomic politics, we see the dumping of goods from the global north, anything from stale computers, rejected chicken parts, wilting negligee. We see the glaring absence of Golden Tree chocolate, Ghana's fine brand, and the grinning presence of Cadbury's and Toblerone in international duty-free shops. We see the absence of high-quality Kenyan Kericho tea from hotel breakfast trays, replaced with aromatized English Earl Grey tea. We feel it when an international phone company operating in Ghana overtly promotes fair-skinned slim women over dark-skinned plump ones. We see it in the exportation of arms by industrialized countries to warring factions, warlords, and whatever else we want to call them, while sitting at the UN to pontificate on how conflicts in Africa should be managed. We see it in the assault of black bodies globally, from the murder of miners in South Africa to the killing of black youth, especially in the US. And for us in the academy, we feel it when our knowledge about ourselves is silenced and buried, replaced with so-called expertise of global North knowers. While we recognize the hegemony of Euro-centered ways of knowing, and venting has some therapeutic value for us, we must assert ourselves uncompromisingly in the global knowledge production industry and restore our educational system so that our young people have a revised sense of identity and self-worth. If, for example, our young people don't know about the ancient civilizations of Ghana, Mali, Songhai, Kanem, Bornu, Egypt, Tunisia, Oyo, Mogadishu, their political institutions, and why they were so efficient, how can we develop a sense of pride and develop political institutions that suit our political situations? Of course, I take for granted our appreciation of African-centered knowledge. The ASAA's goal is to be that professional space where we can do these things. Currently, there are professional associations for anthropology, sociology, linguistics, and a few others, mostly located in Southern Africa. There isn't a continental one for African studies professionals. We are a not-for-profit organization and seek to promote the work of professional Africanists in the social sciences, humanities, physical and applied sciences, principally in but not limited to the academy. We seek the professional development of our members through linking them to important sites such as the Council for Social Science Research in Africa, CODESTRIA, and all the opportunities that exist there, our Biennial Conference, a possible future journal, networking and nurturing the next generation. So for example, yesterday we had 2 workshops. Yesterday and the day before, we had workshops for emerging scholars, one on grantsmanship and one on publishing, and we want to thank the Social Science Research Council and the African Studies Review Journal for their generous support of these workshops. In this conference, we have 27 sessions with 63 panels addressing diverse topical themes. Many students are represented in this conference, and that is extremely gratifying. We have 260 academics from all over the world, with about 142 coming from the continent. The Akan say that Obakonsa Onyame eni enkata. Literally, a single hand cannot cover God's eyes or face, or the sky or the horizon. We need all hands on deck. Before I close, I would like to thank our gracious plenary speakers who have been extremely generous with their time and to be present here at personal cost to themselves. I'd like to thank all the volunteers who have worked so hard and gives us hope for the future, that in an environment where people are willing to do things only if there's a monetary value attached to it, these young people have shown their commitment to the work of the ASAA. We want to especially, once again, thank the Institute of African Studies and its director for their generous support for this conference, and our various sponsors, and last but not least, Mr. Akunu Dake, who has been an indefatigable driver of this conference program. There will be some bumps on the way. There will be a few things that don't move the way you had hoped that they would. We just crave your indulgence. Please let us know, and we will do our best to smoothen the waters for you. Prepare yourselves to be challenged, excited, and inspired. Look around you. There's an amiable welcome from everyone who is sitting to your left, to your right, in front of you, and beside you. Friendship and collegiality are here. Thank you once again, and Akwaba.
Thank you very much, Professor Kusia Dumaku Ampofo. I've come to know this woman very endearingly, because if you ask all the volunteers, they'll tell you that if she wants something, she wants it yesterday. And that's why we're having such a good conference. And I'm a boy. Over to you. All right, I also like to recognize headmistress of her former school, Mrs. Alice Prempeh Fojo, headmistress of Ebri Girls Secondary School. You're welcome. Came all the way from Ebri, up the hills. Dr. Kamo, I see you. And all the LOC, local organizing committee members who are here. I can't mention all your names, but You're all welcome. Thank you very much. And thanks for the good job. I would now like to welcome Professor Georgie Chikata, Director of the Institute of African Studies, who are indeed hosting this conference.
Good morning. The chair of this occasion, the Provost of the College of Humanities, Professor Samuel J. Mensah, our special guest, Nana Kobna Nketia V, Omahini of Esikado Traditional Area, our keynote speaker, Madam Elizabeth Ohene, members of the Diplomatic Corps, conference co-chairs, Akosi Adomakwam Pofu and Seth Esuma, members of the Executive Board of the ASAA, members of the Management Board of the Institute of African Studies, Dr. Godwin Murunga, Executive Secretary of Codestria, and senior members of the Codestria Secretariat, the Ghana Dance Ensemble, plenary keynote speakers, Dr. Wangui Wagoro, Professor Techua Menu, Professor Jean Allman, Professor Jacob Gordon, conference participants, members of the university community, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and invited guests. On behalf of the Institute of African Studies, as host institution, I'm pleased and proud to welcome you to the second Biennial Conference of the African Studies Association of Africa, ASAA, which is taking place this week. The theme of the conference, African Studies and Global Politics, is really apt, and I commend the organizers for their call for papers, which laid out some of the burning issues within global politics and Africa's situation within the global order. The response to the call has been tremendous and has enabled them to craft a rich program with sub-themes such as African agency in international relations, decolonizing intellectualism and educational movements, approaches to conflict resolution in Africa, Africa's justice systems, global terrorism, counter-terrorism, and African lives, health issues, music and dance, gender relations, democratic consolidation, issues of climate change and environment, and migration, to name only some. These sessions, as well as the plenary keynote sessions and this opening plenary, will enable us to discuss some of the key issues facing Africa and its people at this present conjuncture of globalization, in which the economic model that has underpinned globalization is under great stress. As many commentators have pointed out, economies, societies, relations have been restructured across the globe, and the main beneficiaries of this restructuring are definitely not on the African continent. Africa's positioning in the global order as a source of primary commodities has been significant for the continent's current situation of paradoxes, such as the cycles of growth and stagnation, growth without job creation, and even more importantly, this makes us particularly vulnerable to the ill winds from the centers of globalization. The debt, the youth employment, hardships, and xenophobia gripping Europe, the United States, and Australia are all mirrored by African young men and women drowning in the Mediterranean, and young women suffering sexual abuse and inhuman conditions in the Gulf states, just to flee poverty and indignity in an Africa which many insist is rising. At the same time, migration within Africa, which has always been more significant than migration outside Africa, is under stress. There are several signs of xenophobia in various African countries, and an assertion of land rights of autochthones against land claims of migrants from other parts of the same country because of growing land scarcity. Within African studies, we are all concerned about what it will take to change Africa's position in the global order from a dependent periphery and a source of cheap natural resources and labor to a continent of self-determination and prosperity that serves all its people and not only a few. Social movements in Africa are increasingly quite effective at challenging social injustices and misrule, and they have been stirrings among the youth in Africa, which have raised fundamental questions about education in general and tertiary education in particular. The Rhodes Must Fall and the Fees Must Fall movements in South Africa, for example, have raised questions about the entire purpose of education, the institutional and intellectual cultures of universities, the curriculum, and the racial and gender composition of educational institutions within Africa. Outside the academy, these demands resonate with new social movements of young organic intellectuals in Senegal, Togo, Mali, and La Côte d'Ivoire, who've raised questions about their conditions of existence and their citizenship. Togo is at present in turmoil, with thousands marching to demand the end of the Yadema dynasty that has been in power for over 50 years. And North Africa is still experiencing the aftershocks of the Arab Spring and the failure of the social movements there to capitalize on the gains they made in this period. But the current conjuncture also offers us many opportunities for research and activism and state action. And they include a renewed consensus about structural transformation in Africa, an industrialization agenda, and concerns about structural inequalities after decades of intellectual and policy focus on poverty. These processes have been embraced by continental institutions with agendas such as Agenda 2063, CFTA, Accelerated Industrialization Frameworks, and the African Mining Vision. Another source of hope is Africa's artistic revolution, which is a source of growing cultural and economic integration and of self-confidence and self-determination in Africa. We also see the return to the idea of developmental states, which is a departure from the strong ideological push to make the African state a night watchman and a referee for contest among social groups and a protector of law and order and foreign investments. There's also the growing confidence of social movements in both rural and urban areas, and a new role for NGOs in supporting social movements. And last but not the least, the global order is becoming a multipolar world. At the same time, we must be cognizant that China also has its own interests. This situation, in spite of all these opportunities, also includes dangers which check Africa's ability to realize change required for structural transformation. And this includes the continued framework of economic liberalization and market fundamentalisms, our aid dependency and the aid conditionalities, European and American responses to their own crisis, which is seen in an even more ruthless approach to what is left of Africa's natural resources, using aid as leverage. We only have to look at what's become of the Millennium Challenge accounts and the economic partnership agreements to see what challenges Africa faces. It is my hope, therefore, that this and future conferences, we discuss constantly some of these issues that can shape an exciting research agenda for the future. We should also revisit the role of African studies and its place in Africa's renewal in the context of Africa's issues. And the Institute of African Studies will contribute to the knowledge production efforts and is firmly committed to the ASAA project as an integral expression of our mandate. At the official opening of the Institute of African Studies in 1963, when it has been in existence for several years, Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, laid out a revolutionary vision for African studies in African universities, which was vastly different from that which had driven the establishment of African studies outside the continent. It is this vision that continues to animate us at the Institute of African Studies and drives our teaching, learning, and knowledge production and our outreach activities. It is this vision which drove us to establish the Kwame Nkrumah Chair in African Studies in 2005. And it is this same vision which has led us to embrace the idea of the ASAA, which was established here at the University of Ghana during our 50th anniversary celebrations in 2013. We consider the ASAA as a natural outgrowth of collective efforts to center knowledge production and dissemination in Africa about Africa within Africa. And therefore, we have been very active in all the processes leading up to the establishment of the ASA, which had originally been the initiative of the president of the ASA, Lungisile Ntebeza. Since its establishment, we have hosted the ASA Secretariat. And secondly, 3 of our postgraduate students, and I want to mention them, Prince Daku, Mami Chua Brobe, and Edwin Eje, have at different times provided administrative support for the ASAA. We've provided accounting support for this conference, and we've hosted the local organizing committee. We are providing conference rooms, volunteers, and we've supported the local organizing committee with fundraising. Our commitment to the ASAA now and in the future is unquestioned, and we'll continue to offer the needed support to grow the ASAA from strength to strength. In terms of its vision, mission, and goals, the ASAA and the Institute are reinforcing each other in the vision of a dynamic, vibrant, and effective African studies, which is able to construct a new Africa through knowledge production. And we therefore look forward to working with all of you to make these aspirations a reality. For now, I wish us all a successful conference. Please enjoy the Institute. It's one of the treasures of the University of Ghana. We are the only research institute at the university with a substantial undergraduate and postgraduate teaching program. We are home to research faculty from both the humanities and the social sciences, and we have a robust support infrastructure of knowledge production and extension, a library with a unique collection of published and unpublished materials about Africa, our journal, the Contemporary Journal of African Studies, our small but very important museum, the Nketia audiovisual archives with rare private material, primary material, and last but not least, the Ghana Dance Ensemble, which has been performing for us today. We invite you to visit our facilities during your stay here, and we hope that you find the serenity of the University of Ghana stimulating and will enjoy Accra and all it has to offer to discerning visitors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Georgie Chikata, for excellently providing all these facilities and human capital for this conference. I would like to recognize the Minister Counselor and Counselor of the Embassy of Brazil, and also to invite Her Excellency Maria Elisa de Luna, Ambassador of Brazil in Ghana, to say a few words.
Well, good morning. I must confess that I don't feel capable of saying a lot of words anyway, because I'm here to learn. When I saw the title of the conference, they were inviting me to come, I said, I must come, and not only me, all my staff, because we have to learn. We are in Africa to learn because Africa has a lot of things to teach to the world, and especially to my country. I am from a country with more than half the population, where more than half the population is from African descent. That means more or less 110,000 people, and even more now. So we are the second largest country in the world with black population, behind only Nigeria. And this is the country I intend to represent in Ghana, and this is the country I'm representing here, the country to where I belong. Thank you very much for this invitation. I only can say that I'm totally honored by it. And please allow me to learn. And I'm sure that in a few 5 years that I want to stay here, at least, I will be able to say more in an occasion like that. Thank you very much for inviting me and bringing me to this podium.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would now like to invite the Executive Secretary of Codestria, Dr. Godwin Murunga, to also say a few words.
The Provost, College of Humanities, University of Ghana, Professor Samuel Ajay Mensah, our keynote speaker, Madam Elizabeth Ohene, the Vice President of the African Studies Association of Africa, Professor Akosua Adomako, Director of African Studies, University of Ghana, Professor Joji Chikata, incidentally also President of the Council for the Development of Social Science Research. Ladies and gentlemen, Codestria is a premier social science organization on the continent. Founded in 1973, the Council has committed itself to the production of social science and humanities knowledge on the continent. Our key mandate has been to ensure the visibility of the African voice on global discourses. And every year, every generation, there are new reasons why this mandate was not only prophetic, but has consistently remained important. And indeed speaks to the theme of the conference we are having this week. African studies, as historically conceptualized, has been a site of extremely interesting debates, extremely innovative thinking, extremely creative ideas. It has been the site where Africa found allies before Africa itself as an intellectual community came of age. We cannot obviously forget the Basil Davidsons of this world. We cannot forget the Jan Vancinas of this world. And more contemporarily, we cannot forget, for instance, our colleague Jean Ullman, who is sitting with us here. But we'd be running away from another reality of African studies if we didn't place it at the table. And it is that it has also been a site of counter-struggle against Africans in certain ways, as historically conceptualized. There have been instances where Africans in the diaspora have been forced to raise big questions about African studies, about how it is framed, about what it advances. The archives are now being opened. If you look at the papers of Melville Huskowitz and what he says about W.E.B. Du Bois, it raises questions about a doubt that Africans had the capacity to produce knowledge by themselves. I am therefore happy, and indeed we as Codestria are therefore extremely happy, that the African Studies Association of Africa is joining us in the agenda of intervening in African studies to emphasize the centrality and importance of the African voice in the struggle for knowledge, but also in the struggle for making Africans understood as the human beings that they are. It has been a challenge for Codestria, occasionally almost as a lone voice, to make this argument. So our message of solidarity is a message that says, join us, we want to work together, we will support you, you will definitely support us, and we want to make African studies a core part, not just of what others do for Africa, but what Africans do for themselves. If this is the agenda that we are going to follow, I am very proud and happy that Codestria is going to have a partner that is going to help advance this struggle. It is not by accident that it's happening at the University of Ghana, Legon. Professor Joji Chikata made reference to the historic speech that Kwame Nkrumah made at the founding of the Institute for African Studies. If you haven't read it, it is a revolutionary speech, as she rightly pointed out. That the Institute for African Studies has continued to advance this particular goal is a pride we have. It is also a pride that the current director of the Institute for African Studies is also the president of the Council for the Development of Social Science Research in Africa. So we are proud to join you today. We are proud to join you all the time. And we are going to be supportive, we are going to share goals, we are going to share ideas, we are going to share our struggle, and I hope in the end, African studies will begin to occupy the central place it should occupy in Africa. It shouldn't be the case, it shouldn't be the case, it shouldn't be the case that the biggest African studies organization, the biggest African studies meetings never occur in Africa itself. That when they take a leap out of North America, when they take a leap out of the USA, they go in the neighboring Canada, and when they take a bigger leap, they enter into Europe, and never before is the African Studies Association, for instance, never before have they had a meeting in Africa itself. So I launched this initiative. I am happy that it's happening. We as Codesria have always done African studies without feeling the need to say we are doing African studies, because we take it for granted. And we want African studies to begin to enjoy that kind of energy, life, and speak on behalf of the ordinary people of Africa here in Africa. Thank you very much, and all the very best.
Thank you very much, Dr. Murunga, Executive Secretary of Codesria, for your very warm words of solidarity. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we've come to an important part of this program, the official opening, and it's my honor to introduce to you Nana Kobna Nketia V, Omahini of the Sikado traditional area of Sekendi. He's a traditional leader, academic and educationist. He was born in Sekendi in the western region of Ghana and was educated at Infant Spring School, Cape Coast, also at the University of Ghana and the University of Calabar in Nigeria, where he obtained his doctorate degree with his work on the Oron in Nigeria. Nana Nketia has been a professional teacher most of his life, most of his adult life, and has a number of books. I remember, and I know one of his popular books is African Culture in Governance and Development, the Ghana Paradigm. I know he's an expert in the area of culture and African-centered thought. He's been chair of the board of the Ghana Museums and Monuments Board, the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, and I know he's cultivating very much the Nana Kobna Nketia, the fourth track. And he's putting up a museum with main artifacts which depict African liberation. He's also a patron of the Osagefo Genius Awards. And in 1996, he was installed as Omahini, which means king of the Sikado traditional area in the western region of Ghana. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege and honor to introduce Nana Kobna Nketia V, Omahini of the Sikado traditional area.
Chairman Medasi, I stand in all the protocols that have been established this morning, and I say good morning to you all. I really don't know how to begin. When my good son Dake was introducing me, there are things sometimes you hear about you and all that you wish you could walk through the door because wisdom lies in silence. But now, I still have to speak. When I see the gray-haired gentleman sitting in front of me too, I become a bit more frightened and wonder if, with the black hair, I should stand in front of the gray-haired ones and speak. Furthermore, I think almost everything that I should say has been said by the lady Joji Chikata. So please, forgive me if I repeat some of the things she said. But this unique conference, I can see, is taking place after about over half a century, when the Sheikh Anta Diops were here and hallowed these walls. At that time, they were bubbling with the excitement and hope of a newly freed, and I put the word freed in inverted commas, Africa. They were fired with the zeal of a continent which was to stand on her own grounds through her own institutions, her own philosophies, her own ideologies, her own character and creativity, among other things. Africa was to develop on her own genius. Obviously, the Africans who met here had not been cloned intellectually by Europe. They extirpated the intellects of free spirits. My predecessor, who happened to have been a vice-chancellor at a point in history, Nketia IV, who participated in this conference, was telling me later on, he says, I'm a devout African, and I express my humanity through that reality. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, that is history. Any study of history is entertainment unless it offers lessons for survival, self-reliance, and human growth. When you cast your mind across this continent and muse over our footnote status to other parts of the globe, I sometimes wonder if we, as contemporary Africans, learn from history at all. I was therefore astonished to receive an invitation to this conference signed by a professor whom I know as having great guts and would not sell an African soul for anything. She is one of the very unique people I've ever had the fortune of interaction. Her African-centeredness directs her perception, thoughts, and actions. Of course, I knew I had to be here. As a symbol of Mother Africa, her invitation was indeed an order. And she is one of those who make you see the African proverb that if you don't stand for something, you will fall for something. Some people say anything. In fact, Professor Kusa Adumakum Midawase, in my culture, I'll refer to you as Besia Adumakum, but that needs explanation. African studies has been ongoing since the African has been in existence. It was in Africa that the Delphic oracle statement, man, know thyself, was borrowed. In ancient Kemet, Ptahhotep is credited to have put on record, the body is the house of God. That is why it is said, man, know thyself. Your association, therefore, I believe, studies the contents that go into stating, I am African. The brand African is generated from the consciousness that make up one's consciousness. Therefore, it's a statement of identity and denotes the awareness of everything in one's environment that impacts on the individual as well as the community, together with their simultaneous impact upon the environment. It is the contents of that consciousness that pour into the I am African. Consciousness, of course, comes from within. I am brings out the inner core of what one is. It is the past restating or reaffirming itself in the present. It's an expression of the experience in the present. Experience is the total knowledge from the past of one's environment. Now, the question I would ask the conferees, the participants, is whose experiences are you bringing to this table, to this conference? Is it the product, is your mind the product of your ancestors or the product of somebody else's ancestors? you need to ask yourself such a question. It is the consciousness you have brought to this conference that makes the theme, global politics, quite stimulating. Because if we look into Africa, we see that we are enmeshed in the reality matrix of the West. All our institutions seek to image the West. We borrow Western definitions. The Western did not reach the large body of our intellectuals. In fact, most of us are very much aware that we have not been mentally decolonized yet. We are still caught up in a dependency syndrome because we borrow our thoughts, almost everything, from another culture. So a lot of these studies have more or less been Euro-African studies of Africa, not African studies of Africa. And that is the challenge that I think you have here. A friend of mine was commenting on why we carry out political activities, educational, social activities for our well-being, and wonder why the results are not positive, given all the sincerity that we have. Then he said, the reason is because the experience that formulated the consciousness we use and caused the body to do those activities were not the experiences of our ancestors. Therefore, if you use the experiences of those who colonized you and rationalize why they colonized you, then most likely you might be going off the track. I don't want to harp on that too much. But then they created the rationale so that they could tell you, look, we came here to civilize you. We came here to do these things. And if that was the rationale on which they stood, then we also have to be careful working with those kind of thoughts that came about at a point in history. Thus, the consciousness you bring is the challenge of this conference. Is it to bring us liberation or create greater change for Africa's enslavement? After all, we never decolonized, as I said. And the violence beyond violence, which Fan has written about, Kobnaseki wrote about it in one way, is still wreaking havoc, the holy violence among African intellectuals. Currently, sometimes you feel that the African's personality appear to have either been mastered or remastered by the West. And a large body of the political leadership or socio-political leadership or mixed leadership remind one of Malcolm X's Uncle Tom's analogy. It brings to the fore the saying in Chi or Fante, Akoko Bunsa, Naniwe Fride, Akwama Richanen, the intoxicated fowl forgets the hawk. It is a consciousness drunk in the experience of Europe. Africa's independence struggle, ladies and gentlemen, was not about being European, and it wasn't for Europe. It was Africa for Africa. Fanon, Sechi, and all of them said, if we wanted to remake Africa in the image of Europe, why then struggle? Why then sack the European from here? That is the problem. However, today, structurally, power lies with Europeanized Africa. Africans living as European mutants inject a futility into the concept of independence. And independence really means indigenous dependence. Culture is a protective scheme for the survival of any people or society. Our culture does not form the basis of our jurisprudence, our social theories, and political philosophies or ideologies. This conference indeed has a daunting task, as Professor Chikato pointed out. It is a war out there. What are the tools you are going to use to fight your own battles? Where would you find the resources to fight those battles for your place on the globe? If your globe, your world is already being defined from somebody else's perspective. It is my prayer that as you talk, you find authenticity, another authenticity that captures the intent of developing a theory of human beingness that is centered in African realities. But then, it is not just knowledge production. When you produce knowledge, you must apply it. And therefore, think about the knowledge you produce and how you are going to apply it. Don't leave it on the shelves so that we go on with our Eurocentric way of existence. We want to be Africans. Well, I think that I've spoken for too long. And urging you to think outside the box, because when you are in the box that we are in right now, and you think within the box, you'll never get out. So I hope you find the resources, the mind to think outside the box. And it's an honor for me to have been asked to cross the Pra, travel across many streams to be here this morning, just to do one thing, to say that this conference is open. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nana Komnan Kisia, the fifth. He's a progressive chief, progressive traditional leader. And I was telling him that this is the longest speech I've heard him made. We've been struggling over the length of his speeches for a while, in many of his functions. You know, he and I, we share a few things together. So I kept on prodding him on this particular one. I said, look, we have to end this thing at 11:15. So, thanks for speaking for very long. I would now like to recognize His Excellency His Excellency Charles Jasop, the High Commissioner of Namibia in Ghana. And a certain man decides to sit at the back because he thinks that my binoculars cannot reach him. Professor Kofi Anyidoho is right at the back, former occupant of the Kamikoma chair. Thank you very much. I would now like some more messages, and I would like to invite Professor Jean Allman to give us a message on behalf of the African Studies Association in the US.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Distinguished guests, conference participants, conference organizers, the Institute of African Studies, everyone who's put together this fabulous program, I want to thank you. On behalf of the ASAA, I want to note that 55 years ago, almost to the day, 1962, held right here was a Congress, and it was called the International Congress of Africanists. Maybe some of you know it. It was organized by scholars based here and internationally. People listened to a number of amazing speakers, including Kwame Nkrumah, W.B. Du Bois, Kenneth Dike, Connor Cruz O'Brien, and many others. At the time, Nkrumah believed that African studies had finally come home, as this place became the center for decolonizing knowledge production about the African continent. In 2017, I'd like to pay tribute to those pioneers, those founding fathers and mothers, and to thank the African Studies Association of Africa for picking up the mantle, for its leadership, its global leadership in African studies, and to wish all of you a tremendous conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Allman. Dance ensemble, are you ready? Huh? Okay. So we'll have an interlude, performance interlude by the Ghana Dance Ensemble of the Institute of African Studies.
leadership of our first president, Kwame Nkrumah, as an integral part of the Institute of African Studies. So the original dance company of Ghana. I think we can give them a hand again. It's now my pleasant duty to introduce to you all our keynote speaker for this morning. Elizabeth Equia Ohene is a Ghanaian writer, broadcaster, politician. I have followed her for many years. Today they will say trolled. She was educated at Mauli School, Ho, the University of Ghana, Legon, University of Indiana, Bloomington, Wolfson College, Cambridge University. She has been a reporter, staff writer, columnist, lead writer, acting editor, editor of the Daily Graphic and Mirror, two of Ghana's largest circulating daily and weekend papers, respectively. She later joined the BBC World Service, where she worked as a presenter and later as a radio programs producer and editor. She reported from many countries around the African continent for the BBC African Service for many years and was BBC's resident correspondent in South Africa from 1993 to 1994 during the transition from apartheid to independence. I'm sure that many of you in this room are very familiar with her voice, even though you may not have met her personally. Ms. Ohene has written 2 books, Thinking Aloud, a collection, Aloud as in A-L-L-O-W-E-D, a collection of articles on events in Ghana from 1978 through 1981, and Stand Up and Be Counted, a collection of editorials that redefined the June 4th, 1979 revolution in Ghana. Ms. Ohene entered frontline politics in 2000 and served as a Minister of State in the NPP government under President J. Kufuor from 2001 to 2009. She retains an active interest in politics and writing. She writes a letter from Africa for the BBC World Service and is on a temporary break, she says, from her column in the Daily Graphic. So I want to believe that it is indeed temporary. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Ms. Elizabeth Ohene.
Thank you very much, Professor Makum. And thank you, those who thought it was a good idea to invite me to do this. Let's hope that you continue to think it's still a good idea. I've spent most of my life reporting from or about various parts of Africa. Recently, there's been talk and accusations in Ghana about people rewriting history. Those of us who write on current events should worry about such accusations, because what we write today would be the history of tomorrow. But you know, such accusations presuppose that we have a history, a set of sacred facts on which we are all agreed, and attempts are being made to distort those facts. I'll get to the history bit in a few minutes. But it's probably worthwhile to start from current events. In 30 years' time, I wonder what the official papers that will be made available in the public archives would be saying about the matters that are making the headlines today. Take any newspaper. or any FM station, or television station, or radio for that matter. And you are likely to get different versions of what you saw or heard with your own 2 eyes and your own set of 2 ears the previous day. But when it comes to the reporting of our continent, there's always been this feeling that we are unfairly portrayed. I've always held the view, even during the time that I worked for a Western media, that it does not really matter what the foreign media says about Africa. It's far, far more important what Africa says about itself. And having enjoyed the music of the Ghana Dance Ensemble, and having had them at a very interesting and important event in my life 2 years ago, let me tell you an unimportant but minor detail which used to irritate me no end. When I worked with the BBC, I used to get extremely angry that every item about Africa that the BBC reported would start and end with some music or drumming and dancing. Everyone. It could be a report from a refugee camp or somewhere in the Congo. It could be an OAU meeting, AU to your generation. Whatever the report, the BBC or any of the international news organizations for that matter would find some music to illustrate it. I complained regularly and loudly that this was an example of them not taking African stories seriously. Then I get back home, and within weeks I had to accept that indeed every event starts and ends with music. That's how we define ourselves. Is that a deliberate decision? Is that rooted in tradition? Nana, I ask. Or is it something we have evolved as part of the African story? Please don't misunderstand me. I like music, and I like dancing and drumming very much. And I do not miss any opportunity to sing and dance. But I had simply not worked it out as something that should be worked into every event, nor as something that spelled my identity. Let me give one more example of the point I'm trying to make here. I've always been fascinated by what we put out and describe as traditional attire. I suspect no tribe on our continent has a more dramatic traditional attire than the Zulus of South Africa. What they call their traditional attire is lion and leopard skins with a spear. I hope the name Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi means something to some of you. Once upon a time, he was a powerful Zulu leader, and he was the leader, I don't know if he still is, of the Inkatha Freedom Party, which used to be dominant in KwaZulu-Natal. I once put it to him very gently, You have to put things to Chief Buthelezi very gently. That all human beings, all tribes, at a certain time, wore animal skins and carried spears. And the Zulus could not, should not, therefore, appropriate that as their traditional attire. I will not tell you the good chief's reply. I am suggesting that the definitions that we have given ourselves may be making our participation on the global stage cumbersome. It is crowded on the global political stage. And if you position yourself to be called to provide the interlude, you can hardly complain when you don't feature in the main agenda. There appears to be an unspoken agreement that the reporting and chronicling of our everyday lives are not really serious undertakings and can be left to entertainers and only people of my trade, journalists. The academics and intellectuals fancy themselves as dealing only with the serious business of the study and history of our affairs. The African story is therefore left to be told largely by non-Africans. And then we complain. Next door in Togo, there's been political upheaval ongoing there now for many weeks. You wouldn't know that if you only watched or listened to our television and radio stations or only read our newspapers. I suspect that our African studies specialists and experts, you, are called in and you do participate on the global stage when it comes to discussions on the historical facts. You are experts and you know every angle of the history and facts about Africa. You are recognized as such by your colleagues and contemporaries around the world. I wonder, therefore, why you don't take active interest in the daily writing and rewriting of history. Because that's what I do. That's what the people who are called journalists do. It is, after all, as I've said, today's newspaper headlines that you will be teaching as African studies in 30 years. Which leads me to the subject of rewriting of our history that I mentioned at the beginning. My mind goes to and I won't like this, but one of the sayings of a famous Hungarian writer, Peter Esterhazy. He said in his Celestial Harmonies, quote, "History belongs to the victors, legends to the people, fantasy to literature. Only death is certain," unquote. A variation on the same theme, of course, is the famous saying, "The winner writes the history books." And I know the winner does write the history books. Otherwise, nobody would take issue with President J.A. Kufuor for stating in his speech at Ghana's 50th anniversary celebrations that J.B. Dankwa had researched, decided on, and campaigned for the name Ghana to be adopted at independence. I wouldn't have thought that there was any argument about that particular indisputable fact. This, after all, is something Dankwa had done way back, even before the formation of the UGCC. And yet, so comprehensive had been the obliteration of Dankwa's role in the official accounts of the struggle for independence that it came as a surprise to a generation of Ghanaians that he had done the work that led to the adoption of the name Ghana at independence. And to carry on with Peter Esterhazy's saying, we will deal with legends belonging to the people. I'll never forget the incredulity of a group of young people when I happened to mention in a conversation how coup d'etats used to be regular features of our lives. The young people found it difficult to even believe that during the period that I was referring to, once you captured Broadcasting House, you had staged a coup. What about the other radio stations? I was asked. And what about the NGOs and human rights activists? I was asked. Not only do the people's legends have a short lifespan, they also tend to become Chinese whispers. The stories change in their retelling. Thus, in the retelling, the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute became this very romantic place that people who believed in Nkrumahism boasted about attending. But in truth, I also attended the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute. Everybody who entered any university in Ghana in 1964 and 1965 had to go to the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute for 2 weeks of orientation. It was obligatory. That was it. And I did. There was nothing romantic about it. You didn't have to be an Nkrumahist. They tried to make you one. The other day, this current Minister of Education, Matthew Prempeh, was reported to have suggested that the school day in the public school should be extended from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. I witnessed a group of young people expressing shock and horror at the minister's reported comment. Many of them did not even know that the school day in all public schools in this country used to end at 4 p.m. and was only changed to 2 p.m. during the PNDC days. I'm told it had something to do with the hunger. I don't know. I can't testify to that. Would I be rewriting history if I state that my school day used to end at 4 p.m.? Let me get to the third part of the Peter Esterhazy saying. To literature, fantasy. There is a dialogue in one of Clint Eastwood's old movies, Outlaw Josie Wales. The character of the senator is talking to Fletcher, the character played by Clint Eastwood. The senator said, quote, Fletcher, there's an old saying, to the victors belong the spoils. And Fletcher said, there's another old saying, Senator, don't pace down my back and tell me it's raining. I'm old enough to speak from personal experience about many of the events of the independence time. My father and 4 of his friends, who were all teachers at Mauli School in Ho, were sent into internal exile away from the Volta region. That is history. It is not to be found in any official account, but it happened. I knew a Dr. Seth Kujo and his two daughters, whom I went to school with, Jagbe and Metrova. And the woman Dr. Kujo brought to Ghana, Genevieve Marias. I say no more. Dr. Kujo's version of events does not appear in any historical account. Would my telling of that story be rewriting history, the victor written history? As the Roman saying goes, vae victis, woe to the conquered. It characterizes the fact that in warfare, the conqueror can set the terms, which usually included a transfer of wealth. Then there is the classic finders, keepers, losers, weepers. It goes, of course, also to the winner of an election, being able to appoint their own choices for many jobs. I believe the standard political term is installing your own team. It is my view that some of our history, as currently being taught, does need to be rewritten. At the very least, to fill in some of the critical blanks. And those of you who purport to teach this history ought to be interested. I read an article in the Graphic recently where the writer argued that nobody celebrates the conception date of a baby, that you only celebrate the birth of a baby. Now, in a country that has such a cavalier attitude to dates of birth, I was wondering whether maybe we shouldn't be paying attention to the conception date. It is an admission that our history is not based on fact. If September 21st, 1909 can be offered as a date for the celebration of the founder of Ghana, and if K.A. Gbedema and Kojo Botsio can be written out of even the CPP victory story, that September 21st, 1909 date was not and cannot be the birthday of our first president. That 21st September date was a Tuesday. President Kwame Nkrumah was not born on a Tuesday. He was most probably born on a Friday, for he was known and called Kofi Nwia up until he went to the United States, and that's where he changed his name to Kwame Nkrumah. Nothing wrong with changing your name, nothing. But it goes to show that we have been changing our dates of birth for a long time. The footballer featured in the official gazette of July 12 was only carrying on a long tradition when he swore an affidavit to change his date of birth from the 1st of July 1986 to 20th December 1997. It's in the Gazette. I'm not making it up. Our history has been deliberately distorted by the victors, and it is time we faced up to it. And if you don't take an interest in the telling of current affairs now, you would be teaching distorted history in the next generation. So, let's straighten out our affairs, and then we can take our rightful place on the global stage. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Ms. Ohene, thank you very much. We are not at all disappointed that we invited you. We knew what we were in. We anticipated what we were in for. You have not disappointed. And I believe that we'll reflect on this, because, you know, this notion of whose history and who's writing it, it's a discussion that goes on, and it's a very political discussion, but we really should not run away from it. Thank you so much, and thank you for making that so interesting and enjoyable. At this point, I'll invite our provost, Professor J. Mensah, to give his closing remarks, and then we'll get some in-house announcements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Akosi Adomako Ampofo. Before I give my concluding remarks, I'd like to take this opportunity to express our thanks to the Institute of African Studies, the only institute within the College of Humanities and the University of Ghana specifically devoted to conducting research on African studies. The ability to be able to pull the assemblage of participants from diverse regions of the world this morning in many ways speaks to the leadership and commitment of the director and also the organizing team. So African Studies, AICO. The keynote speaker has summed it all: the need for historical scholarship in academia. And the face of Africa is also changing. The changing face of Africa is not only a manifestation of the demographic shift in terms of declining mortality and the aging of the population, but I think it also manifests itself in diverse aspects of African culture, society, etc. We are witnessing an increase in non-communicable diseases, which is an embodiment of the shifting patterns of the demographic structure. But in many ways, what we are also witnessing is also a combination of non-communicable diseases with infectious diseases, because we've not been able to conquer infectious diseases. So Africa finds itself in a very peculiar way in which we have a double burden of both infectious and non-communicable diseases. So the historical scholarship is very, very important. And I think historical scholarship should not be limited only to historians. I think every scholar has that responsibility of also inculcating history in whatever he or she does towards the scholarship that he's pursuing. So historical scholarship should not be left to historians alone, but I think we all have a responsibility to bring in history to enrich our disciplines. So the emphasis has been on history, but I think it's also important we look at the different aspects of African cultures as manifested in the diversities of African culture. Africa is very diverse, and there's always been a temptation to generalize African culture. So I think we also need to pay particular attention to the diversities of African culture as manifested in different aspects, whether in terms of the democracy, whether in terms of religion, language, music, etc. And that calls upon us as experts on African studies to also revisit some of the epistemologies, some of the theories, and the methodologies that guide our work. And that in many ways resonates with what our speaker said, that the history of Africa has to be rewritten. And as we take the path of revisiting the history of Africa, we all have to be really mindful of the methodologies that we used. It's really sad that at times we train our own students to be either qualitative and quantitative. And at an early start, a graduate student chooses a path to be either a qualitative geographer or a quantitative geographer. But I think we need to train our students to be mindful of the different methodological approaches, insofar as it enriches aspects of their work. So on this note, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for coming, and also once again to the Institute of African Studies for hosting this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Chair. I think we've done quite well with time. A couple of logistic announcements before I call Abena to say thank you to all of us. Registration, including day registration of this conference, would be at the Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana. Kindly note that registration is a prerequisite for making presentations. I think you all know that already, been informed by email. And it is important that all participants register for the conference unless you have been otherwise informed. On registration, those who have not registered on registration, you'll be given your name tags and your programs. And please advise that you wear your name tags to all the sessions for different kinds of reasons. After this opening ceremony, we'll have some refreshment, and then we'll all leave. The buses will be on the right-hand side, park on the right-hand side for participants. We would leave to the Institute of African Studies and the Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy. It's popularly called LESIAD, just say LESIAD, for the panel sessions which start exactly at 11:45. So the panel sessions start exactly at 11:45. And the panel sessions continue till 5:30 every day from today till the 14th the 14th, to Saturday the 14th. This evening at 7 p.m. there will be a performance of music, dance, and drama. And if you want of African wear, I will dance with you. There will be a performance of music, dance, and drama performed by Chief Mumin, directed and hosted by Chief Mumin. Chief Mumin directed Epic, Wogbejeke, very powerful production. But we're doing excerpts of that, including some music, dance, and drama. And it will be at the Kwabena Nketia Conference Hall at the Institute of African Studies. Please get your tickets at the registration desk at the Institute. It's very important, so we can support that young man. Is Chief Mumin here? Chief? He's not here? Chief, there he is. Yeah. He would be there tonight. Don't miss that performance, I beg you. Get your tickets first, though. It's important. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we'll have tomorrow morning, the 13th, that's Friday 13th, and Saturday the 14th, we have plenary keynote sessions. And they are from 9 a.m. to 10:30, and they will be at the Kwabena Nketia Conference Hall of the Institute of African Studies. We have some powerful keynoters behind us, and they'll be there for us tomorrow and Saturday. And they will be followed by panel sessions again from 11 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Those 2 days. I'm also to inform you that there will be a business meeting for members of the African Studies Association of Africa, and it's at 7 p.m. also at the Kwabena Nketia Conference Hall, and it's for members in good standing. So members of the African Studies Association fraternity, and I guess we all are, please just fill a membership form and pay your membership dues. And it's at the registration desk. And you'll be attending that conference and exercising all your rights. I also like to inform you that some volunteers assigned to the specific rooms at the 6 venues that we'll be using at the Institute of African Studies and at Lesia will be approaching you, particularly the panel, the presenters in panel sessions, and the chairs. They are in charge of those rooms, so they'll be approaching. When any of them come near you, please, they want some information from you and also to alert you about your sessions. I'm also to inform you that there's an updated transport schedule, and the buses will pick participants from their respective recommended hotels from 7:30 a.m. every morning to the sessions which start at 9 o'clock. There's some terrible traffic around the traffic light area when you're entering the university. So please, the buses will start from 7:30. And should you miss any shuttle, please just take a taxi. And also know that Uber is also here in Ghana. So please, you can also avail yourself of the Uber services. I'm also to inform you that lunch will be served, since I will not have any opportunity to make this announcement, I'll make it now. Lunch will be served at the car park and the adjoining lawn at the Institute of African Studies. And the cost of lunch is included in your registration fee. For those who pay, the registration fee is included in there, and you'll be given coupons for lunch. Those coupons are very important. Please treasure them. There is a closing banquet here at the Great Hall. It's a live band, and we shall be dancing a lot to a lot of popular music. Today, me and you, we do. We did to spot popular music by the Sapes International Band. And it's at 7:30 p.m. Yes, 7:30 p.m. Antiakusia says she believes so. That's who is asking the question. At 7:30 p.m. here. This is on Saturday. And you are all invited. But please pick up your tickets at the registration desk at the Institute of African Studies. And it's for a very small fee of just about $40, and multiply that by 4.38, and locally, it's about something like 160. So just pick your tickets. It's a paid banquet, so please. Of course, there are some invitations for our special guests. We've also made arrangements for snacks to be served, snacks and refreshment to be served, and it's on sale at the dining area at the car park of the Institute of African Studies, and it's open all day. There's a snack session, please open all day. You can do your own networking around that snack bar, and it's at the Institute of African Studies. And please, let's meet there also and have some fun. There's also a bazaar and exhibition, including a book, some books, that will also be on exhibition at the car park, also at the Institute of African Studies. So the car park looks like a very interesting place, for the next 3 days or so. There will be a post-conference experiential tour of the central region of Ghana to Kakum National Park and the Canopy Walkway and the Cape Coast Castle and Slave Dungeons on Sunday, the 15th of October. This is also a paid tour, so kindly sign up at the registration desk The deadline for registration, I'm informed, is 2 p.m. tomorrow, Friday, the 13th. So if you're interested in going on that tour, please sign up at the registration desk at the Institute of African Studies and so on. Dr. Kambong wants to meet all the rapporteurs. Dr. Kambong, can you just show? He's here right in front. We'd like to see all the rapporteurs for the conference soon after this opening ceremony. So, thank you very much. After the thank you, we would have some refreshment, and then we'll leave here exactly at 11:25. So it's a very short refreshment session. So let's all go there and network around the refreshment area. And the buses will leave exactly here at 11:35. Exactly at 11:35. The buses will leave for the Institute of African Studies, and the panel starts at 11:45. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I would now like to invite my, sorry, brah. What's that? Presentations, okay. You want to do that before the thank you? She will do that? I think you can do that, and then invite her.
Before we leave here, we have some presentations to make to our special guests. So I would first like to invite Miss Elizabeth Ohene. We have something very small to give her to say thank you. You are supposed to come and receive your... And of course, Nana Nketia. You're small, stand up. So Ms. Abnachre is going to thank us all and maybe a small announcement.
So, I think I'm the most favorite person today because I'm giving the vote of thanks. And when I'm giving the vote of thanks, everybody knows it's about to end. So you are liked. Okay, so before the vote of thanks, please, just some two announcements. Please, this program was streamed live. So you can go on YouTube, Google ASAA opening ceremony, and you find this program live. We also have a hashtag, Twitter hashtag ASAA, and we would like you to tweet as much as you can so that we get a lot of traffic for this ceremony. Thank you. Yes. Oh, I'm not coming to do the thank you proper. So the chair, Professor Che Mensa, Nana Kwabena Nketia the fifth, Madam Elizabeth Ohene, the keynote, Director of the Institute of African Studies, Professor Dodichi Kata, the founding Vice President of ASAA, Professor Kosi Adumakwampofo, the Ghana Dance Ensemble, LOC members, volunteers, and a group I was advised not to forget, the media. I haven't forgotten. We are very grateful, all of you, for coming today, and all of us who have traveled from far and near to grace this ceremony. We know that you are going to enjoy your stay here. So please, enjoy your stay and the conference. And as said, we'd like you to tweet as much as possible for us. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much. She's been threatening to say this for 3 days now and just say, thank you, everybody, go. So we'd like to thank you again for coming. Please enjoy the refreshment.